I mean, we just had a session with Dr. Emma Colley, who's written this really incredible piece on called Invisible Sportswoman. I would encourage the listeners to have a look at it. It's a research paper, and they researched almost close to 5,000 odd research papers from some of the best journals in sport in the world. And what they realized was that there was only 6% of that research in sports science was done on women cohorts. Only 6%.
Hashtag women are not small men. I read this somewhere. When I read of the US women's soccer team and they won the World Cup, and they really very proactively spoke about menstrual coaching.
Welcome to Berry Naari with your podcast hosts Saraswati and Aditi. One, a chai-loving engineer from Bangalore, and the other, a beer-sipping economist in Berlin. Join us and our expert guests as we enter the vibrant world of Indian women through the power of data and stories.
Hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Berry Naari. Today we have something super exciting, personally for me, and I'm sure for all of you as well. So we're going to be talking about sports, women, and periods. So not just because we love talking about periods, but it is super important and actually relevant to everyone in the society. I think for me, if 5 years ago I would have thought I would be talking about sports and period, I would have not believed it. But now, frankly, if I think almost 30% of our lives and our months are affected by the cycle, I think how are we not talking about this? So I think we have very exciting guests, but just to set it up, we think menstruation and period is really important both for girls getting into sports as well as then the performance of athletes. So just to give some perspective, around 23 million, or that's almost 50,000 schools of girls in India drop out of schooling because of menstruation. So that's just dropping out of schooling. So you can even imagine how it might affect sports, right? So it is a super relevant thing to talk about. And who better to have as a guest than a sports person? So Saraswati, whom do we have? We have a super exciting guest today. So welcome Aditi Mutatkar. Is that pronunciation correct?
Oh, perfect. Absolutely right.
Okay, great. So welcome Aditi Mutatkar. So Aditi is a renowned badminton player who represented India at many international tournaments, and I'll present a really small list, Aditi, of her long list of achievements because I couldn't get all of that together, but here are the top 5. So Aditi is a silver medalist in the Commonwealth Games 2010 and a bronze medalist in Junior Asian Badminton Championships 2002. She's only the third Indian woman to be a winner of 5 national badminton championships across all age groups. She's the runner-up of in the Indian International Grand Prix in Lucknow 2009. The highest ranking she achieved was World 27th. And she's the second Indian woman to have played at the Grand Prix final in 2008, and she was a runner-up in 2009. And if I may add, Aditi also has a master's in public affairs from UT Dallas with a specialization in non-profit. So she's definitely an A+ student and currently heads athlete and women's initiative at Simply Sport Foundation, breaking the barriers of menstrual health for athletes. So Aditi, how do you do it all? Welcome to Berry Naari. Thank you so much for joining us. And to everyone else who's interested, please head over to Google or Wikipedia. There's just so much about her and the history of Indian women and sports that I was amazed as I did research for this episode. So thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you, Saraswati and Aditi. I think the space that you're trying to create through this podcast and the work that you're doing is essential. And so, congratulations on everything that you envision to do and the products that you're building. As far as my introduction goes, yes, I am all of those things, and I just did it because I loved every bit of it. Being an athlete and then doing my studies and now working at Simply Sport and doing the initiatives that we run. So it's all led by passion, and that's why it doesn't feel like hard work at all. Every day is a blessing. So I don't sit and count what's going on. I just love every day of what I do. So I think that's where the whole achievement list kind of comes through. I don't really think about it too much. Also, just one correction. I think I have to change this on. I don't know where you got it from. Maybe it was Wikipedia or Google, but I am one of the four women athletes who basically have won all the national championships, because it was me, Saina Nehwal, Aparna Popat, and PV Sindhu, who's the junior most amongst this list, who's also
Okay.
a national champion in all categories. So yeah, it's a very very august list, and I'm
Yeah.
quite grateful to be part of such great athletes.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for correcting that. And Aditi and I keep talking about having women role models, and we're so excited. I mean, I think you're the one, or definitely to look up to, both doing sports and like excelling academics and doing the amazing work that you do right now. I'm very curious to know about your personal journey as an athlete, and also as an athlete who menstruates, because I think Aditi and I got started looking into menstruation across all aspects of our life, and sports was definitely one aspect we spoke to you last time about, and how things work there and how it affects women. So, would like to start where how it started for you, how things have been.
Sure. So I'll just directly dive into the whole physiological awareness that an athlete has. Or at least let's start with myself first. So I think when I had my first period, I wasn't at home, and of course my mother had told me that ऐसा कुछ होता है कि कुछ blood आएगा, and don't get scared, and you have to put this pad up, and थोड़ा बहुत उसमें बात हुई थी, but of course we are not explained why, right? I mean, your mother doesn't, at least my mother didn't sit down and tell me कि इसका science क्या है, ये क्यों होता है. Maybe she thought I was too young to understand, but I never really got an education on that. I started menstruating quite, on an average age around 10, 11. And by that point of time, I was already playing as well. As a young athlete, I do not recall having a lot of issues in terms of, period pain or back pain, or all the symptoms that one talks about or associates with periods. But I soon realized that it's a journey, right? So for example, I realized that I am anemic because I have a condition called thalassemia. I have a minor thalassemia, and that of course, and I was a heavy bleeder as I grew up. As my period stabilized, I had quite decent amount of bleeding, which meant that with my thalassemia and the anemia condition, it had effects in terms of how I recovered, how I processed oxygen in my body, and all of those things, right? But of course, I didn't make those connections at that point. I've started making those connections today, because of the work that we do, and the science that now I read. And at that point, I couldn't make that kind of a connection. And So I think even when we were playing, and that's almost 20. Yeah, I mean, when I was 10, 11, that's almost 15 years or so back, where uh, where it wasn't, sports science wasn't there yet. We didn't know much about sports nutrition, psychology, or any of those things at that point. So it was very nascent in India at that time. So any which way, we didn't have like a sports science team around us. So everything was self-managed, self-funded, self-learned, all of that. Of course, you had your coaches and a trainer maybe. But the process was very generalized. It never was
Mm-hmm.
individualized to how our bodies, how our minds are working, and all of that. That came in much later once I became a little more elite. 10 years into the sport, and I really regret
Okay.
that, because if we had that at the foundation levels, I would have built better. I would have played better. I would have maybe even got more medals. But we didn't have that foundation at that point. I remember that throughout my journey as an athlete at that point, the physiological part of my body, that is my menstruation, I was never asked questions around that. It was
Mm-hmm.
never a feature in the way I was training, resting, hydrating, eating. It
Mm-hmm.
was never asked by anyone that, are you. So, for example, we all had code languages. We still do in this ecosystem today. We still generally use a code language around periods, where you come to training and say, "Mera peet dukh raha hai,"
Oh,
and the
really?
stands. Yes. I mean, for
Okay.
majority of girls, this is still the reality. You might find it a little different in cities, where
Huh.
in tier one cities, where maybe the communication is much easier. But when you go really into the grassroots India, where most of the sport is played today,
Sure.
rural athletes are the majority athletes that basically play sports in the country today.
True.
वहाँ पे अभी भी with this, there's a code language that is used, and like I said, I was from a city and I still used a code language, and I never I never said period to my coaches. I never felt the need. The coach never felt the need to kind of bring it up
Mm-hmm.
and kind of use the word. So we would just say stomach pain, and maybe the things that we did was less sit-ups, or less weightlifting on those days, or
Okay.
if the pain is unbearable, you rest it out, right? This is the only way we kind of looked at period and training at that point.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't understand the anything else other than that, and we were told that generation of women have been playing with their period, so it's not a big deal, and you just have to find your way.
If you had
um,
matches on a period day, were you given any special care instructions on how to handle that, or
no. There was nothing. No kind of education, no kind of communication on this subject. The idea, like I said, was to just gulp it down and just play. We never had any education on, can you take a pill? Should you take a pill? Should Can you take a painkiller? Most of the time, like, and mostly also a lot of, I think this is cultural in India, that you kind of don't want to take any medicine, right? Your mother will always say, "Nahi,
uh,
nahi, but just take care of it." Let's say, no taking pills, no taking.
yeah, yeah.
Nobody trusts the pills, right?
Mm.
So that cultural thing was also there. So we never kind of if we could handle it without a pill or without anything, we kind of handled it like that. So I just played with my period. I mean, there was no other one or the other way to do it. And I at least suffered much lesser than a lot of athletes that I knew who had just unbearable pain, or they had staining, lot of bleeding in the first 2 days, and I mean,
Yeah.
you didn't know what to do, and because you're not having
True.
conversations around it,
Yeah.
uh, and um, and I don't know if the coaches knew things around it, but because the problem
Hmm.
was the first step, कि क्या हम बैठ के इसके बारे में एक बार बात कर ले,
Hmm.
because that
Yeah.
was never done in our careers. Finding ways or finding solutions was never part of the whole
No, this is really
ecosystem.
important. Thanks for sharing that, because I mean I feel that a lot of times for non athletes, for example, who experience a lot of period pain or menstrual issues,
Yeah,
the information that's often given is, oh, your lifestyle is bad, and therefore you
yeah,
are experiencing this pain, and if you fix it, you will be fine. Like, you lose weight and
yeah,
you will be fine. And now, we are talking about, like, so athletes, and of course the best trained, and the best nutrition, and the fact is that menstrual pain affects women. Uh,
yeah.
so there's definitely more to fixing lifestyle or losing weight, to actually manage your periods better, so that you actually live to your fullest potential or give your best performance. So I mean, thanks so much for bringing out that point, because that really,
No,
I
I
think, is
mean,
important for everyone to know that it affects and it has to be managed, and you have to know how to
yes.
handle it.
Yes, I think, I mean, if you look at the research also, it's quite up there, that almost. So when we do our simply periods, I'll just quickly brief people who are
Yes, we would
listening in
love
for
to
the
know more
first
about
time.
that. Yeah.
So Simply Sport, of course, is the foundation that I worked with currently. It was founded by Ankit Nagori, who's a serial successful entrepreneur, and currently runs Cure Food. So and he's passionate about sports, and that's where he started Simply Sport Foundation. And for everyone who's listening in, please tune into our website to look at all of our programs and what we do. I don't want to go deeper into all of that because we are talking about menstruation today.
We'll definitely add it to the podcast links also, Aditi. Yeah.
Yes, that will be very helpful so that people can check us out. But I'll quickly talk about Simply Periods because that's more relevant to the topic we're talking today. Simply Periods is a initiative that works on menstruation and sport specifically right now. The idea here is to kind of help athletes and coaches get aware about what is menstruation, how it impacts performance, what is the role of nutrition, what are the health issues one can have related to menstruation, how do you manage your training with everything that menstruation brings with it, and to basically start the communication out and above, clear, no using code languages. We want to kind of just make it one thing, which is just like, just athletes, like they talk about nutrition, they talk about menstruation. We want to make it as simple and basic as everything else that athletes and coaches talk about. So we do this through workshops. In the last 3 years, we have already impacted more than 3,000 odd athletes and coaches through these workshops. And we have separate workshops. We have athlete and coaches workshops, and we have a very good data kind of coming in from these workshops because we have a lot of forms that are filled in and all of that. And when you both of you were raising this, that the athletes also have symptoms, or they also do not really have the most blissful periods. You are right. I mean, our research suggests that almost 95% of the athletes, who we have spoken to or done these workshops with, have reported menstrual symptoms, and period pain being number one in all the other symptoms that one can have. And even international research, if you look at some papers around athletes and maybe PMS even, again, it's almost 90% of them that have reported PMS symptoms during their lifetime as athletes. So it's not that we have some red carpet because we are so active and we eat so well. It's nothing like that. We just manage our period just like everybody else.
Yeah, congrats, like great work being done by your organization, like really inspiring for us at Cranberry, and I'm sure the whole community working on women's health. So I think like going a bit deeper into what you're referring to as like how both the symptoms of menstruation as well as the cycle impact performance and training. So would love to know more on both of that. Just to set up the context for the listeners also, because I think we all are so obsessed with the cycle that we know so much about it. But like, I mean, you can also add on to this from what we know, that the menstruation cycle is not just the days you bleed, but it's actually the whole time, because the two most important reproductive hormones, estrogen and progesterone, are basically going up and down throughout the cycle, right? And that really affects how we feel, our energy, our emotions, and how we have, if we have any physical pains. And there are different phases to this, right? Like there's the follicular phase, which is right after the period. There is the luteal phase after that, and then there is the period. So yeah, so two questions, like does the cycle affect the performance as well as the symptoms? Yeah, would love to know more.
So yes, so it's very fascinating. I mean, the whole cycle and what is going on with our bodies and how it impacts how we feel, and then of course how one might play, or how one might do activities. Though a disclaimer here is that the research around should you train according to your cycle or according to what phase you are in, should you train accordingly, is something that is still quite debated. I mean, the jury is still not out that yahi karna hai ki follicular phase mein you're supposed to build your muscle, and in the luteal phase you don't build as much your muscle because or you don't do as much weight training because you may not be able to build your muscle well, right?
Mhm.
Just a disclaimer on this, that for people who are listening in, that the research is still kind of, there are people who are saying yes, you should be kind of doing
Mhm.
your training according to your cycle, but there are
Yeah.
also people who are still saying that there's not enough evidence. And
Thanks.
we'll maybe talk about
Thanks for being
the
so
research.
evidence based, Aditi. Sorry. Love it.
No, I mean, I think we are, as people who are working in women's health, or anybody who's
Mhm.
working in health, it becomes very critical to be very honest about things and be very
Totally.
responsible about what we are saying, because we are talking about young girls, we're talking about careers, and especially with sport, we are very sensitive to this because, they're looking at us as people who are going to give in the information, right? So we have to be very
Mhm.
very clear and put all the disclaimers out there before we say कुछ change करो या कुछ चीजें करनी
Hmm.
है.
I think Aditi, and
But
I think I'll call her Dimri for this episode because I have two Aditis. But I think, yeah, Dimri is going to do like a happy dance with this, what you
Yeah.
shared. She's like, yes, we have to give full information to people. Like, we can't just say half of it.
yeah,
So, thank you for being, again, so transparent with this information.
yeah, no, I mean, I think it's important. It's fascinating research. I mean, if
Mhm.
we can actually work according to our cycle and all of those things, I mean, and it really impacts training, it will be revolutionary, and we might
Mhm.
get there in the next few years, but we still need to wait for those next few years to say stay definitively that this is what we need to do, right? But coming back, I mean, from whatever research there already is, where people are now talking about phasing your training according to your cycles. So
Mhm.
basically, to break this down very simply, there are three major phases, right? There is the follicular phase, which basically starts right after your period, and then there is the ovulation, which happens right in between, and then there is the luteal phase. There are lots of hormones that are working in our bodies, but I think one of the critical hormone that is working during these two phases is progesterone and estrogen, right? And in
Mhm.
which estrogen is the follicular phase dominant hormone, जहाँ पे generally estrogen levels are higher and progesterone levels are they kind of drop, this is just before the ovulation happens, right? So ये phase होता है जहाँ पे research suggests that it's because estrogen is anabolic in nature. Sorry for all the scientific terms, but थोड़ा scientific बनना पड़ेगा because this is science. Anabolic होने के कारण it's almost like testosterone, which means that your body can build
Mhm.
muscle better, it can recover better, right? Your motivation levels are quite high because it's a feel good hormone as well, because the serotonin levels increase during this time. So this is the time where generally a lot of athletes say that I almost feel like a guy, I mean, I just feel really strong, I feel motivated mentally, physically, I'm building better, I can push harder, all of that, right? And then when you go towards after ovulation happens, ovulation is basically the egg kind of releasing, and the whole process of menstruation starting after the egg releases. After that happens, the luteal phase starts, which is progesterone gets higher during this time, and the estrogen drops. And progesterone, on the other hand, is not exactly as nice to us as estrogen is, and यहाँ पे generally suggested that strength training does not work as well because you're not able to, it's catabolic, so this is a catabolic hormone, and the strength reps that you do and all of that will not actually help, or it will not actually build muscle so well. Right,
Mhm.
this is the second part of the phase, which is the luteal phase. Also during this time, what tends to happen right before your period is that you both the estrogen and progesterone have a serious drop,
Mhm.
and because both these hormones drop, this whole idea of PMS, right, which is premenstrual syndrome, and apparently there are more than 100 of those recorded in research. That's where when these hormones drop, you might feel more anxious, mentally not as great, anxiety levels might go high, pain in your back, in your stomach, pelvic, all of that will start, and that's where you know that the period is generally coming, and this can be a space of almost a week, 10 days before your
Mhm.
period for a lot of girls. And that's where you need to start thinking a little bit about not doing too many twists and turns in your training. Again, this is all from research which is pro, all of this. A lot of research, like I said, will say that it's very individualized. Every
Mhm.
athlete will have a very different experience of the cycle, and different ways of adapting to it. But this is a general framework that is used currently, that your the follicular phase is the phase where you build muscle, where everything is good. The luteal phase, this start because the estrogen level drops. You need to be a little careful. But I think in terms of your phases and your training, one thing that is very clear from whatever work we have done at Simply Periods is that number one, it's a very individualized approach.
Mhm.
Number two,
Totally.
your cycle is playing with your performance in one way or the other, either mentally or physically. There is no saying no to that. It is
Interesting.
impacting athletes,
Okay.
and but again, this whole phase method of training, even with our work that we have done, we are not very sure. Again, every athlete seems to have a very different experience with it. So one of the
Mhm.
critical things that we have realized is that the period tracking, right, what we call, and there are lots of period trackers right now in the market which are free to use and all of that. But period tracking becomes extremely important for every athlete as part of their training. Like they track their nutrition,
Mhm.
like they track their sleep, like they track everything else. Tracking their period with their training also can help a lot in terms of understanding how their cycle works and being better
Mhm.
prepared for tournaments and having your strategies in place. Because not every athlete will suffer, but if you're suffering, then you need to have your whole thing designed very well according to your cycle.
Mhm.
So I think when we do the kind of tracker that we use, doesn't just involve your start day and end day of your period. It involves everything around it: the way you're eating, the way you're
Okay.
resting, the way you are just feeling. Is there any PMS symptoms? There's
Mhm.
8 or 10 symptoms that we have identified which come up a lot when we talk to athletes. So we kind of get them to evaluate that as well. The training amount of training that you're doing, injuries if any. So for example, it has been said that in research that when there is ovulation, that is one of
Yeah.
the periods where you have to be very careful with your body, because there are some changes that are happening hormonally, and you might get injured during that time. So
Mhm.
there are some athletes actually that have reported having certain niggles during certain time of their cycles, right? So that is gold information for an athlete, that if she
Yeah.
knows that
Yeah.
this is recurring, that she's having some kind of a niggle, ankle niggle or some kind of niggle during this part of her cycle. She can avoid things and she can prepare better for that part of her cycle. And that is gold, right? That is
Yeah.
information that if an athlete has, and can avoid making that mistake, you can basically help her out. So that's why I feel that that's where we are right now. I mean, at least from our understanding of this, that
Mhm.
there's more research required, especially in India as well, because I think we have lots of research happening abroad now on this topic, but
Yeah.
we hardly have research happening in India. But I just feel that what we are suggesting right now through this initiative is that, like you're tracking everything else as an athlete and as a coach, you
Mhm.
need to track her period, and you need to
Okay.
track everything that is going around her period, so that you're just kind of. I mean, it's also a part of giving her dignity and making
Yeah.
her an equal part, because I mean, हम ऐसी बात करते हैं अभी in this sport ecosystem that that period is मतलब क्या है, मतलब ठीक है ना, हिचकी जैसा है, it's like a हिचकी. I mean, it is a हिचकी. I mean, it is metaphorically also a हिचकी that
True.
we हमारे लिए बस वो हिचकी है, and then वो चली जाती है,
Hmm.
but I we can't do that anymore. There's too much science now to say that we need to be careful, and physiology has to be a part of decisions that you make as a physically active woman. So yeah, I mean, that's where we are with this whole
Yeah.
training cycles, how it impacts training and performance and everything.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. That's super insightful and like really well explained. Yeah. I
Okay.
mean,
I
this
don't know.
has
I
to.
tried. It's quite technical and all of that, but yeah, but there is some relevant information around this.
For sure. I think for both like athletes as well as like a laptop athlete like me,
Yeah,
it's super relevant because
yeah.
I mean, one, we have to, that tagline, period is not a hitchkey. Very good. Yeah, I think we should get that
Yeah,
trending.
it's not an hitchkey. I mean, it's not something that you need to wait to get over
Ha,
and then get on with, you know. I mean, it's
ha.
something that we live with forever. So you can't just treat it like a hitchkey. Yeah.
No, amazing. And I think like personally, I have to say, so I think from what I'm hearing from you, what your personal as well as Simply Red's stand is that you share this information, the tools with women, and then they can see for themselves how much it matters and affects their performance and training, right? So personally, I have to say it matters. It affects me. Like I never thought it would be, but like I totally see how I exercise is so different and I feel different. So the individualistic approach is really interesting. So, what about you personally? Like, did you know this when you were at the peak of your performance? Like
Oh
all this
no, I
information?
really, like I said, I was completely unaware of the physiological part of my training and my performance. I had no awareness,
Yeah.
education on it. I never even thought that I should read about it. I mean, I mean, period. Like, for me also, it was a
Huh.
hitchkey. I mean, that
It's
was how it, yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
it was something that I just get over with in the 4 days and then focus back on my training and, all of that. So it really, I really couldn't deep dive as an athlete into this, and I didn't have, or neither did I have people who told me to deep dive,
Hmm.
or understood this as well anyway. So like I said, I mean, I had a lot of injuries in my career. I can't say that all of those injuries were caused because of my cycle. Today I might say maybe it was one of the reasons. Maybe I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
eating right during that time, or maybe I wasn't resting right during that time. Maybe my thalassemia had a role to play, but I can only now hypothetically talk because nobody really
Yeah.
sat down with my body and tried to understand what was going on. So um so yeah so I think, I never was aware of it, and I kind of had my career. I just went through with my career without this knowledge. But like, with simply periods, what is happening is that, because we are also talking to the coaches, it's
Mm-hmm.
what we've understood now, and what we have to be very careful of in this Indian sport ecosystem especially, is that a lot of these decisions, for athletes, young athletes, are being made by male coaches, right? Because we have,
Uh-huh.
for whatever reasons, right now we have, the ecosystem is run by men more than women. We have coaches, the proportion of coaches of men is more than women. So that means that agar you're not talking to the male coaches, you are not going to solve the problem, because whatever the kind of culture we have in India is that we do whatever the coaches say. That's how
Okay.
we all kind of, the whole the Guru Dakshina parampara, and Guru is everything, and I agree with that, because it really puts discipline into young minds. But so that's how it is, right? So the coach decides आज training कितना करना है, आज खाना क्या खाओगे,
Acha.
कौन आपके sports science team में होगा. So he has that power, and that's why
Okay.
it's very important that he understands this as part of this whole training methodology. So we attack it with both the athlete and the coach. It is not just talking to the athlete, because जब तक coach नहीं ये समझेगा, they will not
Huh.
sit together and talk about this and not have a conversation. So I just feel, and I think one of the very cool things, and I think I mentioned this, to both of you when we spoke for the first time, is that, it's not that, number one, it's not an India problem. I mean,
right.
I don't want the listeners to think that, ये तो हमारे culture का problem है, and, ऐसा
Hmm.
कुछ नहीं है. This is a worldwide problem. All the women in the world are fighting this. Right from Wimbledon में हमें white skirt नहीं पहनना है, which just happened, after
Yeah.
so many years of Wimbledon. It just happened last year, or, year back, that, women said that हमें क्यों बोल रहे हो white, हमें नहीं पहनना, हमारा color, we are not comfortable, we don't like to stain, and so I think, I mean, it's a global problem,
Hmm.
and it's not something that one should think कि यार ये इंडिया का बहुत बड़ा problem है, right? um, and coaches even abroad are not aware about these things. I mean, it's very recent. This whole physiology training women
Okay.
period is very recent, and a lot of it has to be blamed on research. I mean, we just had a session with Dr. Emma Colley, who's written this really incredible piece on called Invisible Sportswoman. I would encourage the listeners to have a look at it. It's a research paper, and they researched almost close to 5,000 odd research papers from some of the best journals in sport in the world. And what they realized was that there was only 6% of that research in sports science was done on women cohorts. Only 6%.
Menstrual
And
cycle पे research तो next level लग रहा है. If the research itself is being done on 6% women.
yeah, only the sports science research is only on 6%, and and again, our menstrual cycle actually seems to be one of the biggest obstacles of women research because it is so individualized. It really is difficult because all three of us on the call today have very different menstrual cycles and bodies, and now imagine hundreds of them in a research cohort. So it's very difficult, it's very expensive, but that doesn't mean that you don't do it.
Yeah.
I mean for ages now, the whole art, the whole factor of training of everything has been generalized from bodies of men.
Yeah.
And menstruation is just one piece of the puzzle for the woman, right? For a woman athlete, or for anybody into fitness as a woman, we have so many things that are different, right from our breasts to our pelvic, to our brains. I mean, the concussion levels, the women are much more prone to concussion than men, because of the way we are built. So there are so, even nutrition, the way we load carbohydrates, or the way fasting works on a woman's body compared to a male body is so different. Fasting doesn't seem to work in for women athletes who are training. So there are so many things that are coming up, and that are so different for women. So yes, because we don't have the research, and we don't have enough people pushing for it, and enough funding for it, what tends to happen is the coaches also, क्या बोलोगे coaches को जाके, क्या बताओगे, उसने data पूछ लिया. So that's why I think Simply Periods, where we are trying to get as much data as possible, so people start taking us seriously, because anecdotal there's a limit, right? And that's why I think what both of you are trying to do, that we need enough data to make a case that this is important, because somehow women need to work 10 times more harder to make us point. I think to just say, yaar, ye important hai, chalo kaam kar lo is pe. So I think that, and this is, and like I'm saying, the good part, or I don't know if it's a fortunate or an unfortunate part, but we are not just a community in India. It's a worldwide community, and women fighting worldwide on trying to figure out how will you start taking women bodies seriously, how will you start pushing money and research on women bodies, right? And I think we are in a fascinating place right now, and especially in India, where we are just, I think most of us are just starting out in this space, and now it's going to be what we do for the next 10 years, which might set the path for the next generation of women who will not have to hopefully fight so hard. So for example, Simply Periods is like the first ever initiative in sport, right? Which is focused only on menstruation and female bodies, and how do you train female athletes, right? So I think we're in an exciting space, and now we have to just tread carefully and responsibly. But I don't know. I think that's different things.
I completely agree. I think
I just last one thing. What I was trying to come at is that through our workshops, what we have understood is that the male coaches, especially, it's not that they are lacking in empathy. They empathize with this. They want to empathize with their athlete. They want to work on these things. But किसी ने बात ही नहीं की उनसे, nobody, and this was not just in sport, but this is also in their homes, because we all come from the same kind of family, right? I mean, culturally ऐसा नहीं है कि उनके घरों में बैठ के रोज बात होती है कि हाँ चलो आज पीरियड आया है तो पीरियड ठीक होता है. ये ऐसे बैठ के चर्चा ही नहीं की किसी ने उनके साथ. And कहाँ से empathy आएगी, उनको किसी ने बताया नहीं. And when we do this workshops with them and tell them that there are these many PMS symptoms, this is the amount of pain that an athlete can go through, and all of that, by the end of the workshop they're like, यार काश हमें ये सब पता होता, हमें किसी ने बताया ही नहीं, you know. And we want to help the athlete, we really
Yeah.
want. So I think one of the best things about this whole Simply Period experience has been that it's not that, you know, the male coach is some somebody who lacks empathy and is the devil. You know, he's actually a champion, and it's about us just talking to them as normal people and normalizing this, and they will help, they want to help. So that has been a very, very cool learning for us, I think, through this initiative.
That's amazing. No, I such an important starting point, right? Like with the working with the coaches. I think when I read about I first time came across this when I read of the US women's soccer team, and they won the World Cup, and they really like very proactively spoke about menstrual coaching as a big reason that helped them win, that they trained. They just kept track of their periods. They didn't even say that they trained in menstrual cycle. This is that we just kept track of our periods, and then
what they did with the Oreco study, right? Oreco is a I think it's the app or the IT or the software that they used during that time. The only thing apparently they did well was to rest at the right time of their cycle, which actually led to not having enough injuries, which actually led to them being more fitter during their tournaments. You know, and that is all. You know, that is all. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. So it's not like everything needs to be rocket science. I understand that there is rocket science in some of these things, but a lot of these things might be as simple as just track your period. Understand the trends, you know, do it long enough so that you know the trends. I mean, एक महीने से कुछ नहीं होगा. एक महीने अगर आप track करोगे तो कुछ समझ में नहीं आएगा. It has to be a 6-month long process where you then understand कि यहाँ पे ऊपर जा रहा है graph, यहाँ पे नीचे आ रहा है. You know, this is what is happening. So it's as simple as that. So that's what I'm trying to say. And that's what Oreco study was majorly. That was the highlight of that study, that they just...
That's amazing. I didn't... just rest and recovery is such an important part of as much as training and...
But the science, I think, is in the precision of the personalization, right? And knowing for me when I need to do it more, I think, because otherwise generic advice hogi bas ki rest karo sahi time pe, which is like less useful than telling me like rest today. And
yes, exactly. So, I mean, that is the key thing that made the difference, right? And I think it's not just true for women. I mean, in sport, any which way, to make that difference between being the bronze medalist and the gold medalist is the individualization, right? I mean, that is what makes the difference. And our pitch really right now is that with everything that you're individualizing, individualize the cycle also, please. I mean, let's make that part of that whole whatever software, digitalware, whatever you're creating, any technology for sport needs to have space for female health and wellness as well, which is a little separate, right from breast, pelvic muscle, nutrition. These are the 5-6 things which have been identified now, which are different for women. And if we can just identify that and, you know, ensure we are kind of bringing technology which makes space for it. That will change the game. Yeah.
Amazing.
I would probably add one more to...
I was just gonna put in another tagline. Hashtag women are not small men. I read this somewhere.
Yes. Women are not small. I think this was done... this was popularized. I don't know if it originated from Stacey Sims, but it was Stacey Sims who spoke about this in a TED talk, and she kind of popularized that term. You know, women are not small men. So
you should put that out for sure. So I think I wanted to ask about another aspect. I mean, there's the wellness and the cycle, the wellness and the nutrition, but the other aspect is also just the hygiene, which is almost we think that is the basic, but you know, again as we were researching through this episode and as discussing with Aiza, that there have been like interviews of athletes talking about not being able to find sanitary products when they are on tournaments or even when they're in their training, not having facilities to change. So tell us more about that. Like how are the basics covered when it comes to playing with menstruating like people or training with them, and how is it in India or otherwise, since you have like you've seen international scene as well. So
I wish I could say things are so nice, but
another episode on just menstrual hygiene, I guess.
And sport, and you know how it affects us, but I just think that public toilet is a problem in India. I mean, we all know that as men or women, and it just is worse for women because we just can't go in a khet and do our whatever thing and come back. So toilets are a problem, and it's the same in sport. Most of the stadiums do not have clean, working, uh, toilets with water, dustbins that are clean, dustbins that are separate for period use and for normal use. The whole idea of how do you disperse a period pad, what is the general thing that one should follow, all of that is not there. It's lacking. And the problem with this, the problem with this, especially from what we have seen for athletes especially, is the whole problem of the UTI, right? The urinary tract infection. Women are again more prone to it because of the pelvic muscle that we have, which carries so many things, which not so many, but a few things which a man's pelvic muscle doesn't have. So the friction is much more again, and that's why you are more prone to a UTI. And if you don't get a clean toilet, you are going to get infected, which if you're in a tournament, you are not going to be able to play, and performance is getting hindered, right? So hygiene becomes extremely important for the athlete, and because we generally don't have good toilets and all of that, it of course affects us a lot. What we have understood in terms of products is that majority of the athletes in India are using pads right now. We haven't moved to the cup. It can be problems around not being able to afford it, to not being able to find the right fit. A lot of athletes say कि हमने try किया, but we just weren't comfortable. We don't know how to use it. Tampons are again not as used at all. One of the surveys that we did in Odisha when we were there for almost a month was that we really found 2% of athletes actually using cloth even today. And 2% is still, for us, it was a big number, even if it was just 2%. So I think in terms of the product, we are still looking at pads being predominantly used by athletes. A lot of them start with the cloth, but luckily once they start coming into academies or finding peers and seniors and the staining problem and all of that, they at least shift to the pad. So most of them are using pads. But again, I think in terms of the problem really lies in um, when you're training when a male coach is training young female athletes. That's where we in the workshops make very clear that as a coach or even as a male athlete, it is actually good to have a period care kit. We call it the period care kit, where there's some essential things that a athlete can have, like a heating pad or a painkiller strip or a get a road or something get a road. Right? That's not even a thing.
The energy drink.
Yeah, get a raid or whatever.
Gatorade.
I don't want to market Gatorade. I don't drink it, but I'm just saying that any kind of electrolyte or something that it can be a kit which is a very menstruation specific kit, and we talk about that in our workshop. But what I'm trying to come at is that as a male coach or as a support staff, when you have your first aid kit, it's very important to have a menstrual pad in it. And that is something that is always missing from your kit, because somehow you think it's not your duty to give a period pad to your athlete. So that is again just about sensitizing them to this, that having a pad, whisper ka pad rakho apne paas whenever you're traveling with young girls, because some of them actually have not started their period. They might start it in the train. So what are you going to do then? So that these are the things that in sport you have to be careful of, because and that's why the idea of products and what they are, how they look, a lot of coaches are not aware of it. They may not have even got a pad for their people in their family, because it's such a taboo. And they are and one of the things we do in the workshops is actually to give all these products to coaches and let them touch it and feel it. Dekh lo, kuch nahi hai. It's like a pamper, that's all. It's like just a sneaker version of a pamper. So all this touch feel things help, because it normalizes it immediately. And we have very funny conversations around a lot of things, because when one sees a tampon or something like that, and he kept skipping rope jaisa hai, this is a flask, and we have good conversations, and I'm like, chalo haste iske bare mein. That is also good, because it normalizes it. It doesn't make it eeks and and all of that, right? Um, so yeah, so in terms of the hygiene part, I think of course systematically there are things that need to be improved just for women in general, not just in sport but in general. And hopefully we soon get there. But even simple things like having a pad dispenser, a lot of facilities don't have it. Like what if every toilet has a pad dispenser? That might actually help a lot of young athletes and athletes who can't afford the best pads in the world. um but I think overall, at least what I've seen is that at least majority of the athletes are aware of a pad, and use it, right? It's not that we are on still some people using cloth, and all of that generally doesn't happen amongst the athletes that we talk to. But yes, in terms of, we have a whole section on menstrual hygiene. How do you even wash? What are the things that you do to clean your vagina properly? What are the simple things that can help keep it dry? Why should you keep it dry? What are some of the things that you do for rashes? Because of the pads, one of the worst issues is the rashes, right? Because we sweat so much and you bleed so
Yes.
much that you're going to have rashes, right? So how do you solve for rashes? Menstrual hygiene becomes extremely important, because like I said, it can cause infections which will actually in turn not let you play.
Amazing.
But yeah, lots to do in terms of just systematically helping girls. But yeah,
Want to attend one of your workshops, right, Sarah?
Yeah.
all of you, all the listeners, please. I mean, it's a fascinating
God.
experience to just talk to
Yeah.
girls and especially the coaches, because I think they are really good people who we think are villains of this story, but they aren't. They're just actually. I mean, they are the heroes of the story.
They're
And
truly the allies in a way, but
yeah,
just like
they
with less
are.
information. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I mean, they really are allies, and they majority of them want to help. So, and it's
That's
nice to see
amazing.
that with
या
these
कोई
pieces. Yeah.
डॉक्यूमेंट्री बना दो इसके ऊपर follow you going to workshop.
यार
I
कोई
would watch it.
स्पॉन्सर कर दो. I mean,
हाँ,
कोई सुन रहा है यहाँ पे, अगर कोई प्रोड्यूसर सुन रहा है, स्पॉन्सर कर दो यार. मतलब
हाँ,
we are a foundation at the end of the day, so we are always looking for sponsors, money, to do our job better. So
True,
yeah,
so
why not?
you're a non-profit, right? Like your organization
Yes,
is
Beauty Sport is a non-profit. Yes, yes.
amazing.
Hashtag donate for periods in
Donate
sports.
for Simply Period. Yes.
Donate for
We-
Simply Period.
Sorry, it's
Yes,
not donate, it's investing.
Oh,
फिर जब
yes,
medals
yes.
नहीं आएंगे
True,
तब
true.
लोग complain करेंगे, पर
yes, that's a
invest
better
करो
word.
इसमें.
I know. I think we should change this narrative and say invest rather than donate.
Hashtag
I
invest
mean,
in Simply Period.
and that's what I'm saying, right? I mean, up female, and right now in sport especially, you're seeing so many women do so well. There are
True.
these leagues coming up for girls, and all of that. So I think this is the best time to invest in female health in sport. So जो भी सुन रहा है, Cranberry के audience, please, if you have money and you want to invest it well in a very interesting kind of space, please do connect with me.
Yes, great. I think this has been a great conversation. But so I mean, if I have to ask you, like, what if you like if there are sports people listening, or if there are just people listening to know, okay,
Yeah.
no, now we see that it really impacts our cycle and our life. Like our cycle impacts our life. Like, what are the 3 things or 4 things that we should keep an eye out on or watch out for? Like, I know it's hard to kind of summarize me, but maybe what would be the 3 or 4 things that you think you would say that, okay, yeah, just like talk about this, or like do these things? What would be that?
Yeah, no, I think, see, in general, the first thing is just please track your period. I think, I mean, you will be quite amazed at what you track and the kind of information that your body gives you, right? I mean, and the changes that you see. It's a fascinating experience, and one of the things that is crucial to understand is that our cycle is constantly changing. It's not that एक साल अगर आप एक टाइप की साइकिल चल रही है तो वो जिंदगी भर वैसी चलेगी. You through your phases, it's going to change. Menopause, we've not even touched right now in this conversation. Menopause is
yes.
a different devil altogether, and then uska impact on sport and active women. Perimenopause, all of these things are also there. So any which way, I think tracking of period is number one. Track your period, and you'll find some fascinating insights there. The second thing is that just just have a conversation with the opposite gender. I mean, it is so interesting. I mean, I think I had my conversation with my husband, and he was in an all boys family, so he had never spoken about periods before, and we just sat and spoke about it, and and it was fascinating for him, and now he is more empathetic to female colleagues, and when suddenly you see a spike in somebody, and he's like, Shayad, I should be careful because maybe she's going through something, and so that is enough. And I think just having, and similarly for when I say, I think second is opposite gender, but the third is same gender. A lot of times as women, we just don't share our stories enough.
I know. When you were saying कि in coaches से किसी ने बात नहीं किया, I was like, but in women के साथ भी किसी ने बात नहीं किया. We need to talk to everyone.
That's why I know immediately. I think the third point is to talk to the same gender. When men talking to men about period is so cool, or I talking to another girl and telling her that nahi yaar, mera na idhar, I had a girl who spoke about severe period pain, and I said, do you want to just get it checked once, because I think this is not normal. And she got it checked, and there was something changed. I mean, there was a problem they found, and now she's pain free. So just talking to each other. A lot of times we don't do that, and that actually puts a lot of darkness around some things that most of us are suffering from. So same gender, opposite gender, tracking, and I think the fourth thing is I would just say that know that there's a lot of research happening on this topic, and it's a responsibility. Of course, as men, but more so as women, to go on the internet and use the internet to go deeper into these subjects. If of course you're interested in health, and most of us are, because health is the most important thing. So I think being in sync, and there are a lot of interesting courses which are generally free on being active as women, and how physiology can kind of aid to that, and how do you use physiology to your benefit. So I think just going out on the internet and having this lens when you look at training, and having that female lens on it, because I think that is something that is missing, because we are looking at training as a more holistic thing, which is great, but I think having that female lens will open up your eyes to a lot of interesting things, which might help your journey in fitness and health in general. So I think these are the four things that come to mind right now.
I think I wish we could continue talking more, because I recently also saw you posted about endometriosis of sportswomen.
Yes, we are doing a session. It's going to be really cool. It's going to be so cool. It's an athlete who went through it, and now she's recovered, and she actually ran an Ironman. So I'm sure it's going to be a fascinating story. So it's happening on the Simply Sport page, guys, at 11 a.m. on this Saturday. So people should really tune in. It might be
listen in, everyone. Tune in. So so much more that we want to unpack with you on that.
Maybe a second episode or something.
Yes,
sometime.
Great. Sure. No, so I think my key takeaways probably from today's episode is talk about it, research about it, and most importantly, invest in it.
Yes, invest. I know that was my fifth point, I think, which I was. Please invest in female health. I think, and especially in the sport space, because you'll find so many great role models in sport for women in general and girls in general. So
you being one of them. Thank you so much for doing all that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saraswati. Thank you, Aditi. Thank you.
And thanks everyone for tuning in to this episode. It's a wrap for today, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Can I add a takeaway? Another takeaway.
Oh yeah, sure.
Aditi's are amazing.
Dim.
Hashtag Aditi's are amazing.
I know exactly. Important wala to bhul gayi.
Oh yeah, on that narcissist note, let's say bye.
Bye.
Bye.